Hello, hello, hello. I am author and entrepreneur, the Cerebral Palsy vigilante, Zachary Fennell. Joining me again today is somebody else who knows about living with cerebral palsy. Your level of fitness is Daryl Perry. Daryl, thanks for coming back to the channel, and I look forward to the conversation we're going to have today.
It's always a pleasure to be back, Zach. And yeah, we're gonna dive into it today, and we'll see where we end up. Always a good time,
Yep.
though.
For our viewers looking at the screen right now, you know what we're going to be talking about today is odd comments heard living with cerebral palsy. And I think to really to get this conversation started, we've kind of have to define what an odd comment exactly is. So, Daryl, can you when you hear that, when you hear an odd comment, uh, what how do you define that?
It's the kind of comment that you kind of do a double take when you hear it. It's not what you expect to hear when you're just out and about, and or at really in any whatever part of life. Somebody has a comment, somebody has a question, and it's just whether it's a question that seems a little too personal, whether it's an assumption or a comment that is offensive. It really could be anything, but it's this whole thing of we're just outliving our life, and people tend to have thoughts and comments and opinions on it. And it's something I think that we all in the CP community have dealt with to some level and have for much of our life.
I would not that my I don't need to validate your definition of it, but I am very similar of how I like the way I feel about it is like that odd comment is just something that makes you be like you're just going about your day and then you just kind of like, wait, did I hear that correctly? Or and it, and it's funny because sometimes they're meant as a compliment, and it's like, no, bro, this really isn't a compliment. Which, well, let's dive right into that. Now I have stories I can share, but let's start with you. What are some odd comments that you've heard um, during your years? Can you give a few
Oh my
examples?
gosh. Yeah. Well, I will. So when people try to play guess the disability, because if you look at us physically, and every case of CP is going to be a little different, but there are other diagnosis, other conditions that look very similar. So I have had people ask me, like, kind of, so one guy was like, kind of, hey buddy, and he's like, MS. And he wasn't pointing at my feet, but that was like the thing I was waiting for. I've had somebody ask me when my car accident was that I was in that caused this. And then there's the one that I think a lot of us, if you use a handicap sticker, if you're driving or if you're riding with somebody and you have a sticker, it's like I've had people look at me until I get out of my car, and then it's like they do the head to toe check. Oh, okay, I guess he is disabled enough to have the parking permit. So yeah, sometimes it's the comments. It's not even words. People's expressions are speaking volumes. So yeah.
It's funny because I actually, what our prior conversation that we decided to use this as the conversation. I recently at work had a customer ask me how long I've had Parkinson's, and it was just kind of like, I don't. I have cerebral palsy, and it's funny because then the customer kept going by mentioning like, oh, Stephen Hawking had cerebral palsy, or I was just like, I'm pretty sure that was MS, and it is this almost like there's this exchange of like like treating disabilities and their diagnoses as if they're all interwoven with one another, and they're not. I mean, we do all make up one community, but there are sub communities in there. And it's funny, I actually wear on my lanyard a cerebral palsy. It's a green ribbon cerebral palsy pin. So where the Parkinson's came from, I have no idea. But and I also mentioned earlier how it's not always meant as a jarring comment or what's it's it people can have good intentions with their comments. I know one that sticks out to me. This is like half a decade ago now, but still really sticks out to me. Was I was part of a writing group, and this one woman was introducing me to another member, and she went ahead and said, "Zach is the most non-disabled disabled person I know." And wow, I like gritted my teeth. I'm like, do I say something? And I just decided I had to because the person had good intentions. They were trying to compliment me, but the whole idea of it is like if I'm an advocate, when someone speaks up, because the problem I found with that compliment was the idea it really just focuses on disability, cerebral palsy, whatever it is, as being something that really is, living a sedentary lifestyle. I don't look at myself as being non-disabled because I've done marathons or written books or work, or any of these. I just look at it as, taking for putting informing what living with CP can be, and not residing to stereotypes of a sedentary lifestyle.
I think so many good things. I mean, we could go off on an entire side tangent of people with the best of intentions that say, I don't even see the disability. And it's like, it's there. One. Two, even if, and this is where the balancing act is, even if you don't mean to say something offensive, it still could be offensive. By the same token, if somebody says something, because I see a lot of interactions in some of the CP communities online where people will get absolutely 1,000% offended if someone is sharing their thought and experience and it doesn't map the exact experience that the other person is having, as if their person one is speaking for person two. So while you absolutely, people's intent, if it's an offensive comment, it's an offensive comment. But we also, when you're talking about not playing into the stereotypes, we can make a concerted effort to not get offended. Like it's because I think when you're an advocate for it, it's not pretending that it's not there, and it's not pretending that you know day-to-day life for you, me, or anybody else that has CP is going to be just like everybody else. It's there, and like you're saying with the marathons and me with the activity and the races, I'm not I'm somebody that's doing these activities and I happen to have cerebral palsy, which means I have to make some adjustments on some things that I do. But I'm not just the guy with CP that does the races or the workouts. But there's so much nuance to all this stuff too, I think.
For sure. I'm glad you brought up the point that we're all different. Well, we all, there, whether it's the smaller cerebral palsy community or that greater community where someone might want to mix in MS, Parkinson's, or, play that disability, guess that disability. whatever, whether it's the larger disability community, the smaller cerebral palsy community, whatever we're all different individuals. Well, and that's one of the reasons I really enjoy having you come on my channel and having conversations like this, is because you're providing a fresh perspective and creating engaging content and conversation that I wouldn't have if it was just me talking to this camera to the viewer. And I hope that also, is beneficial to the viewer out there, that you're enjoying these conversations as well, and maybe giving you, as Daryl and I play off of each other, your going like, oh yeah, I've had this experience or this or that. And so perspective comes into mind as well, because we talk about, someone might have good intentions, doesn't make their comment any less, uh, it doesn't make it less offensive.
Yeah.
I personally feel it's like trying to understand perspective and trying to be understanding, and not totally going off on someone, because there's such a tricky balancing act at the level of, and everyone's different. I want people to feel like they can approach me. So I'm not, if someone, makes a comment like the Parkinson's comment, I'm not going to just kind of like grind that to the halt and give this lecture and make the person making the comment feel like they can't approach someone with a disability without fear of lecture, and that, because I feel like that is also going to do less good. A lot of the reasons people are make the comments they do is because they don't really have that much experience with cerebral palsy or disability, so they don't know what's possible.
I agree. And I think, and why I really enjoy us having these longer conversations, putting it on video, putting it on podcast, is because we can unpack it. Because see, a lot of this stuff, it's going to sound like we're talking out of both sides of our mouth. Well, wait a minute, you're just saying that people have said some really offensive things, but you're also saying, like, don't fall into the standard reaction of like going off on somebody because they said something. And I think it's important to point out that even when we're trying to be understanding, when we realize that we either might be one of the first people that they're coming into contact with that has CP or another disability, or that we can change the perception just by having a conversation, the initial feelings are still there. And, even when I said before, like, you can choose whether or not you are going to be offended by the comment, it's still an offensive comment, right? So like, the feeling for it is there. It's just, it's really tough because even in the instances that I brought up as my examples, I didn't go off on the person. But I felt it. I didn't like the way it made me feel. But like it's very tricky. So if you are somebody that has, responded and verbally lashed out at somebody that said something, it's understandable. But I also think, and this is what's real tricky in today's world, if you're going for advocacy, a lot of people will take advocacy and awareness as, I need to, I've got a microphone, I've got a platform to tell you how the world should be, and you better listen. And I don't think that's how we actually get change to happen. I think change happens based off of what you said on why you have me here and why we do content together on my platforms as well, is you're getting a fresh perspective. Because I think when you're willing to have a conversation, whether we're talking about the conversation between you and I or the conversation between somebody that you see in public, there's an opportunity for understanding. And opportunity for understanding, I don't believe comes from telling somebody off, even though you may feel like that's what you want to do. And frankly, even if somebody would look from the outside and say, yeah, you got every right to completely tear them to shreds verbally, I don't think it's productive. And I think it's very easy, especially when you see stuff online, for people to lean into the harshness and lean into like the venom. I just don't think it's a productive way to go.
A lot to continue to unpack from what you just said there. I'm going to start by kind of emphasizing or clarifying as far as I'm concerned. Is anyone out there that's like living with a disability? I know there are some people who I just want to live my life. Like, I'm not looking to be an advocate for an entire community. I don't want to deal with people coming up to me during my random, day to whether to tell me how inspirational I am or to, without knowing me, or anything about my story, just telling me I'm inspirational for being out, or having someone make assumptions of why I am the way I am. I so ultimately you don't have to be an advocate. I think that's always a personal choice.
Mhm.
I choose to that, and I try to find ways to like be welcoming, to show people like that. I talk about having that cerebral palsy pin on my lanyard at work. That is one way where I'm able to, it's me saying like, I have cerebral palsy, feel free to ask me questions about it. uh, if I didn't want to talk about it, if I wasn't interested in being an advocate, I want to have that pin on there. Wearing the shirt I'm wearing now, the run, walk, roll, limp through like the races I do, I often will wear this shirt, or while I'm training, I'll wear this shirt, so that, because I definitely don't have the gait of your usual runner. So it's going to be noticeable, and someone might, ask questions, and this lets them know. I'll be honest, sometimes it's like in the middle of my walk or run, whatever you want to call it, I'm not like doing distances. I'm not exactly there to be able to have an in-depth conversation about disability, because even though it doesn't seem like I'm running fast, I am testing myself. So I am going. I know it's like, that side conversation can be a distraction, but I wear these shirts to let people know like I am open to conversation. And you mentioned feeling bad, which is something else I want to get about some of the experiences that examples you've cited, and that's something else I wanted to get to, is kind of like that, because it's like those comments come to you, they make you do that quick, like, wait, what? And then you kind of like, how does that make you feel? You mentioned bad, that can make you feel bad. And I know one of the examples you used was someone saying, oh, like about making this assumption that you were in a car accident, which is why you walked the way you walked.
Mhm.
Uh, are you willing to go delve into any more details about how those comments have made you feel, and then more importantly, I guess, is how do you deal with those emotions?
So I wish I knew exactly when this happened, because I would bottle it up and um, make it available or sell it. At some point, people's opinions of me, and people say this a lot, I stopped feeling like I had to prove myself to other people just to exist. And it's one thing, I think, to say that online because everybody will say it. I exist. I am who I am. So how do I feel about the comments? I feel like this is somebody that doesn't know me. And instead of just asking, they're making comments and assumptions and trying, like, they're trying to, in that particular instance, I think the person was trying to be empathetic. It still made me do a double take because I'm like, car wreck, what are you talking about? Because the funny part, and people may not even realize this at first, it took me a minute to be like, oh yeah, the CP, right? Um, like because even though, so like in the moment, how did I feel about it initially? Like it actually took a moment for me to register. Um, there is always going to be that 6 or 8 year old version of myself that anytime somebody says or does something, that'll be like, oh well, we better prove that we belong. But that is something where when those thoughts come up, I've actually gotten really good at overriding and saying, you know what, like they don't know you. Most people aren't gonna understand, and that's fine. And I do think for me for a long time, I really fell into the trap of like feeling like I had to prove that I belonged in every situation that I was in, personally, professionally. But I did get to the point where I was like, you know what, like it's a losing battle, and I don't like the way that I feel when I'm trying to convince people that I belong. And then eventually you get to the point where you're like, I am myself, and if I'm accepted, that's awesome. If I'm not, I'm sorry, but like I can't convince you. So
Yeah, ultimately, the validation you need to say, I belong, it doesn't come from out there, it comes from inside of you. And age, I think getting older has a lot to do with that, gaining that maturity to understand that. Because I felt the same way. I'm actually I'm working, or by the time that this video's out, I will have out on my blog a a post I wrote about risk taking and cerebral palsy, and the the common, or the main concept is that living with cerebral palsy mandates mandates risk taking. That, for an example, I gave high school graduation for me. The sign up or sign in within the gymnasium at our school. Uh, go in the gym. I went in the gymnasium and signed in. Came out. Of course, coming down, going in, I had to ascend a few steps that don't have a rail. You know, a challenge, but still managed to do it. Descending steps even more difficult. And so I stood there kind of frozen, like the risk was either physical harm to myself and try to do this by myself and risk falling. And as I wrote right in the blog post, go from celebration to soreness or worse. Or I could simply ask a classmate for a hand and a help down the stairs, but doing so, you risk, well, what if they say no, or they quietly judge me and think I'm weak, or and not enough. And so that mindset of it, athletics is really what helped me get to that point, grow to a point of no longer really, getting a step away from what other people thought about me. It was from finishing dead last in that first 5K I did to being like that next 5K, instead of focusing on where I was with the rest of the crowd, focusing on how I performed compared to my last 5K. I understood the competition isn't those around me, but myself. And with that came this um, acceptance of other people's attitudes aren't as important as, and opinions of me aren't as important as they once were.
I really like the race example because when you're finishing, when you're at the back of the heat of a race, you got a lot of time in your thoughts, and you got a lot of time to where you could tear yourself down, or you can build yourself up. Because I have proudly finished last, and we've done
Yeah.
on this. I've proudly finished last in every race I've ever been in. And when you say that to people, because I've seen people, they will vow, I'm not finishing last ever again. Okay. So you're basically like, when your competition is going against other people, and I mean, I in some elements of life, absolutely. But when we're talking about something like this, races, which absolutely are you versus you for most of us, um, I think it's a good opportunity to really start to get comfortable with, yes, compared to everybody else, I'm finishing last, but I'm finishing this race. Like, we're making it happen. And then to your point also, I'm not competing against anybody else and what their time is. I'm competing against myself. And no, I mean, I think, and I think you're right. I think it comes with age. I think it comes with um, starting to get comfortable with the fact that, you are living your life and you're doing your thing, and it's not going to look like anybody else's, whether that person has CP or not. You start to get comfortable, figuratively and literally, running your own race.
Yeah. Yeah. That, both literally and as a metaphor, life's a race, and obstacles are going to be thrown your way, and in this case, that obstacle would be that I comment you heard. I know another one, speaking of racing, another I comment I recall getting was I was probably maybe 10 miles into into a workout,
Mhm.
and I try to be friendly with people when I'm walking down, no, because I'm training, walking up and down the sidewalks in my area. There's
Mhm.
a guy out, and watering his lawn, whatever he was doing. I said hi. He goes, "Oh, hey, how are you?" And I said, "Good," but because I was fatigued, it kind of came out slurred.
Yeah.
So between the way I was walking and the third speech, I'm like, "I'm good," and then almost sound like a drunken slur. And I swear I heard him say, "I can tell," as if that was his idea that I was, that I was drunk just walking the neighborhood versus, I have cerebral palsy. I'm 10 miles in. I'm training for a marathon.
Right.
Very, very different scenarios. And it's always, I'm like, wait, did I hear that correctly? Did he really say I can tell? And it's like, maybe like I can't, I'm like 95% sure that's what he said.
Yeah.
But again, not, also needing to concentrate on my movements as a part of my daily, to make sure I don't fall. That is, it's like I wasn't completely 100%. Maybe he did say something else, but it just really like, it sounded like he thought I like, again, just a drunk man wandering the neighborhood rather than someone with cerebral palsy 10 miles in training for a marathon.
Which is funny when you think about it, right? Because there could be this guy living life, thinking that you're just drinking in the middle of the afternoon, stumbling around the neighborhood, and it's like, but that's his thought process. It's not like you had to, like, after you heard him say this, it's not like you had to run back to him and be like, wait, no, I'm not drinking. I'm training for a race. I'm 10 miles in. This is what's really going on. So I think part of it is regardless of what the odd comments are, not really, you don't even necessarily have to respond to some of them. You definitely don't have to defend yourself.
Right. I think that's a great point. At the end of the day, I think, processing the odd comments, it's going to happen. It's, you know, when you do get them, it's it can be as simple as like I'll be out moving at work, and a kid sees me and asks me if I'm okay. I was like, yeah, I'm fine. Like this is just the way I was born. And
Yeah.
that's always how I kind of view it. Uh, but it does when you still get this, odd comment, it just kind of it can strike you for a minute,
Yep.
but you kind of like ultimately finding a way to deal with it in here in your head and not letting it bother you is so important. Is there anything, Daryl, that you kind of tell yourself or repeat to yourself, whether it's on a daily basis or after you hear an odd comment, that helps you kind of be like, I'm not going to stress over this?
You know, I really started working on um, appreciating what I have, appreciating the circumstance and situation that I'm in, because if I'm not in this exact circumstance, I don't have the exact life that I have, and I like my life. And like everybody else, I got, there's good things, bad things, and everything in between. But this is, while it doesn't define me, it's absolutely part of what I navigate, and it's made me who I am. Um, and it's and you mentioned earlier that you don't have to be an advocate, but I think if you have a personality similar to you and I, our personalities lean to where we use this as an opportunity, right? Why blend in when you can blend out, stand in when you can
Exactly.
stand out? And it's not for everybody, but I think given my personality, my goals, and what I want to do in life, I'm happy with who I am. The biggest thing for me now as I get older and I try to stay active is working along with the CP that I have, working along with my body instead of what I tried to do for years, which was basically will my body to do things physically because I felt like I could. And I've since, again, I've started to talk to a lot more people that are in the CP community, and it's a very uh, common thought process of those of us that are considered to be mild, is that you are very active, you're not going to let your body hold you back, but then things start to fall apart. So longevity is the name of the game for me. But I mean, I try to appreciate the situation. Some days it's hard, some moments it's hard, but that's how I deal with it.
Good. I'm glad you mentioned working with your cerebral palsy
Yeah,
rather than, because I think that is gets lost a lot is people don't I actually did I was on a podcast last year back in March, and there was the thumbnail that the guy put together for the podcast
yeah,
was something along it shows me holding my book Slow and Cerebral like this
yeah,
with a really cool background, but
yeah,
then the wording just really took me out because it was like defeating cerebral palsy like a boss or something like that.
yeah,
And it's just like I haven't defeated my CP.
yeah,
I've done marathons. I've living an active, healthy, happy life, but that's not because I've defeated CP. I work with my CP. One of the biggest assets I had was from the moment I was able to walk, being sent to preschool and starting physical therapy from 3 years old in preschool to having physical therapy regularly, at least on a monthly basis, going into college. So that's nearly 2 decades of physical therapy. The and I had a great physical therapist, and I cannot be grateful enough for the fact I had the private therapist I had was so good because I've heard people have horror stories about physical therapists, but this physical therapist was incredible. I'm actually looking right across from me. I have like these trophies. I used to get this is just an example of my physical therapist and the way she was, it is, but I would my both my brothers played little league. I
yeah,
my parents didn't think it was safe for me, so I didn't. Um, they would get they get their trophies from winning, and I remember just being, I don't know if jealous is the right word, envious, whatever, made a remark one day. I think it was 95 was the first time. Um, uh, my therapist surprised me with this trophy that was, excellent in physical therapy. And it became kind of like an annual thing, which she'd get me a different trophy each year. One of them was like for swimming updates, because I always would tell her about my swimming lessons during our
Yeah.
sessions. And it was that, that I've gone beyond. The whole point is that physical therapy has taught me to have this self awareness with my body, to listen to my body, and that's what's helped to keep me, as active as possible and as healthy as possible as I am, in the last couple of years of my 30s, heading into my 40s, is just, those I don't have that same awareness. I'm not able to listen to my, like right now. I'm listening to I can tell my body I need to exercise later, because my body's telling my hamstrings are tight, because I'm sitting with my toes kind of curled up, and my, foot, my heel lifted off the floor, which is a sign that my hamstrings are tight, and I need to make sure I do some stretching later, do some exercising later. And at the time, I wasn't necessarily like, yay, physical therapy.
Yeah.
But looking back now, I'm like, I wouldn't be where I am without it today. And it becomes a part of, all these experiences build and let you become the person you are.
Well, and it's just what you said. Like at the time, you don't necessarily see it, but then looking back, because I had an orthopedic, it was the same. So I had quite a few different physical therapists when I was younger. One is actually the one that I still see to this day, who happened to be working in the office of this doctor. She was like a college student then, and I was a teenager. But I had come to him after physical therapy, and I think this was to get me to do my at-home program, because I was in therapy once or twice a week, depending on the time, and I was stubborn about doing the stuff at home. And set up he wanted me to start going to the gym and using the machines to supplement the physical therapy. And he set this up in a way to where I was just naturally curious about it. And if he didn't set this up in this way, I don't know if I would have taken to working out in the way that I have, and have a very balanced long-term view of it. Because I like that you mentioned the fact that right now, you need to do some stuff later because your hamstrings are tighter, because you're sitting there and your toes are curling a little bit. And it's always there's always just like little things that your body is telling you. Like, I know when I need to stretch. I know, and the older I get, the more I wake up with these mystery injuries that I'm like, how the heck did this even happen? But it's listening to your body. It's knowing the nuance things. It's knowing how to be active on the days that you need to be active, but not too active. How do you scale back on the days that you need to scale back, but not too much? Like, there's a lot of little details to it. And I do think the mindset that we uh, cultivate early in life, I think really helps. And kudos to your physical therapist for realizing that, that the awards were a big thing. Did you say this was not 95 was the first year you remember this happening? Is that what you said?
Yeah, yeah, I believe it was, yeah, 95, and then I think 95. I got one, two, five over there. So I think one of them was actually a year of the Olympics.
Okay.
So uh, you put it in. Actually, you know what? Give me 1 second. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
for
grab that.
sure. For sure. And 95 was a big year for you guys baseball wise up there.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Albert Bell should have won the MVP that year. Was he 50 home runs and 50 doubles? It's insane that he didn't win.
So this was actually the first trophy that Trish got me.
Yeah,
Zachary Fennell's Excellence in Physical Therapy, Summer 1995. And
yeah,
again, it was a complete surprise to me, and it was just like you could. I have this photo of me, at much 95. I would have been 8 with
yeah,
my shirt off from the stretching or whatever, and I just got it like in the air like I just
yeah,
won like
yeah,
a World Series.
yeah.
So it is like it meant a lot, and obviously the fact that 3 decades later I still have it up in my office space tells you how much it meant to me. And
Yep.
then so this was from the Olympics. Olympics. It's this is the medal one, and it says on the
It's a
back
nice
of
medal.
it, Olympics 2000, stair climbing 7-second record. So
There
it
you
was
go.
one of the things we used to do in physical therapy was um, test how how fast I could go up and down the stairs,
Yeah.
fast but safely. And so that 7 seconds was the record. Probably couldn't beat that these days, but that's all right.
Was this
It's
like
so
a stair climber exercise machine, or was this like the wooden steps with
no,
the?
this was like an actual the carpeted staircase
Yes.
in
Okay.
my house.
Oh, okay. I got you. I got
Yeah,
you. Yeah, I remember. I remember going to therapy, and there were physical therapy, and there were steps like that,
yeah,
or kind of like a model. I'm assuming for like the same thing. But no, I mean, it really it shows. I think that brings another point too. Is we get to pick and choose what stuff from our past we want to focus on. You know, yeah, yeah. So that's huge.
yes. Okay, it's so funny because as we're talking, I'm like, well, we've kind of really gotten away from the odd comments, but it's. I'm glad you brought this back
Yeah,
because I feel like that's a good. If I had to sum up our discussion today, that that's it's not just about odd comments, but just overall the feedback you receive from people in your life and deciding how who am I going to listen to, and a lot of it, most of it, 99% of it starts in your head with how you are, who you're gonna choose to listen to, that you're understanding that you don't have to justify your existence to somebody else, all that. And so, I mean, would you feel that's a fair summary of our
yeah.
discussion today? What would you consider the takeaway point for the viewer? And were there any other comments as we begin to wrap up? Anything else you want to make sure to share that we haven't had a chance to touch on yet?
No, I think I think like always, we start with a central topic. We go in a bunch of different directions, and then we bring it back home at the end somehow, some way. I would love to say that that whole comment of us choosing what comments we believe in was something that I planned. No, it just happened in our conversation. But no, I think that's a huge takeaway. I think letting somebody know that even if you decide to be an advocate for CP and voice and try to educate people, that is your choice. You don't have to do it. And then also, when people make comments, you have every right to have the initial feelings that you have, but then you also decide, how do I which direction do I want this to go in? So no, I thought this was a very empowering conversation because that we do a good job of that. I think at the end of the day, we talk a lot about understanding people's thought processes and what they go through, but ultimately, I can understand where you're coming from, but it is your responsibility to go in whichever direction that you want to go in, which I think is great. Plus, I can count at least two or three topics for our next recording that have come out of this, but that's the other thing that always happens too. So all
Yes,
good here.
we could definitely talk about those after we bring this video to a close. And at this point, it would be only appropriate. We've been talking about odd comments, just feedback in general. It's time for you, the viewing audience, to leave your comments and your feedback on this video in the comments below. As Daryl was saying, what stood out to you about our conversation today? Let us know in the comments. Let me know. I'll feedback I will share with Daryl. Any other if you have if specifically giving examples, what's a time that someone um, threw an odd comment your way? How did you manage that? Let us know in the comments. Keep the conversation going. In the meantime, if you want more from me and Daryl, on the screen here is our Instagram handles. That's a great place to start. Follow Daryl if you haven't already. Follow me if you haven't already. And we'll be back again sometime to talk more about CP. Until then, though, don't blend in, blend out.
No.